Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Midnight Cast, the official podcast of the Midnite Romero Society. I'm Midnight Dave, and today I'm joined by
Jenny from the grave.
This is Mike.
This is Katron.
And today we are going to discuss Hellraiser IV Bloodline, also known as Bloodraiser to us affectionately. Katron and Mike, when I said, hey, let's start a podcast, you immediately said, let's do Hellraiser IV. What makes you want to talk about this movie out of all the other ones, first and foremost? Why do you love it so much? What makes you drawn to it? Give me the skinny.
I think Katron had the idea for it in podcast form.
I don't know. I think we just talked about Bloodlines. It just came up, and I was like, Mike and I will do a podcast on that. And then Dave was like, oh, would you? And here we are. Just because we both have an affection for the film, which we hadn't spoken about until it just came up jokingly, and we were both like, oh yeah, that's a great movie. So that's what we're here to do, really, is to convince the rest of the world that that's the truth.
I mean, if you consider, 1 and 2 to be that untouchable duo, of the rest of the sequels, this is, far and away my favorite. And a lot of people would say, well, no duh, but, a lot of people would consider part 3 the masterpiece of the rest of them, but I think it's this one.
Right. And we did discuss that. Not a lot of people seem to have talked about this movie, at least not in the depth and with such affection that I hold for it. So I'm hoping that that'll come across as we speak of it today.
And what sites of affection you have to show us. And Mike, you used the word masterpiece. That's strong, especially after in comparison to the first, and one would argue the second one.
Yeah, parts 1 and 2 are the untouchable duo. But of 3 through the rest, this is 3 through 10, I guess now. This is clearly the masterpiece of them. It's to me better than part 3.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've seen part 3 only once in my life, so I can't really recall much. But let's start with general opinions. Before we get into spoilers, of course, all the listeners, just a fair warning. We're going to give our general feelings about this film, and then we'll dive right into plot spoilers and everything else. So fair warning. Jenny, what did you think of this?
Oh, I've seen 1 and 2. I have not seen 3. And I have watched this movie now 2 times. Once was it yesterday, and then once last weekend, I think, just to kind of prep for it. I think it's fun. Did it hit me as much as the first 2? No, not really. It was definitely a wild ride of a movie. I didn't really love it. I didn't hate it. It's kind of in the middle for me.
I feel similarly. I mean, I didn't love 2. Spoiler, I guess I'm not a real horror fan. I didn't love Hellraiser 2. I admit it. Send me all the hate mail.
I like 2.
2 is
and
fun.
I like 1 and 2. They're great.
I do remember that 2 at least tried to expand the universe of Hell and the world of that, visually, than say this one, where it seems to expand more in the mythos of the box, which I appreciated, and I wish they dove more into the making and the thought process behind the box, the lament configuration as we all know it. Yeah, it was a very interesting movie. I like the ambition behind it all and how it tried to tackle multiple time frames. I don't think that's much of a spoiler to say that, and follow the family lineage of
Bloodline.
The Bloodline.
If you don't know it's about family from the title, then I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you.
Generally speaking, I would recommend it for Hellraiser fans if you're really itching, if you've seen the first 3 and want to dive in more, especially get a little something about the lament configuration and a little bit of backstory behind that. Bloodraiser.
Body horror.
Definitely some awesome body horror.
There's some good stuff.
Yeah. I say this one does for the lament configuration what Hellraiser 2 did for the Cenobites themselves, the main 4 there, Chatters and Butterball and Woman. And I guess we can get into spoilers specifically into that. So viewers, spoilers, here we go. I would like to start listeners. I'd like to start off by saying, straight to the ending, how similar it was to Star Wars: A New Hope and the Death Star blowing up.
Well, absolutely. Let me jump in here. One of the reasons why I love this movie is that it's like three movies I enjoy in one. This is Star Wars: New Hope, this is Interview with the Vampire, and this is Hellraiser. You start off in the film in space. You got the most Luke Skywalker looking motherfucker since Luke Skywalker, ready to tell you about how his family is all intertwined with the lament configuration. That's what I love about this movie. So you did say this, you've got the backstory of Hell and some of the Cenobites in 2. 3, which you may not recall since you saw it once, perhaps. 3 gives you a good backstory on Pinhead himself. And then this gives you the story about the lament configuration. It's sort of like that episode of Doctor Who when the TARDIS comes alive. And then, like, you get to learn about the TARDIS from the TARDIS, except this one is about the lament configuration and how it came to be. So if you were curious about every tiny detail in Hellraiser, this one's like, oh, we got some more for you. This is about how the box was a thing.
It's nice when a series explores that. You know, there's so many series that really don't explore the origins, or they don't go deep. They kind of like stick to the formula, you know. It's nice when they do that.
You know, and if, you know, you wanted to start at the end, it's great to me that Pinhead's last word is amen, which goes entirely against, you know, the heaven-hell thing.
Mm.
And also, given the future time frame, that is chronologically the last time we see Pinhead. So theoretically, this is the film that kills Pinhead.
Right. This is the year 2127. So it can still be canon if you wanted to, because that's the future. It hasn't happened yet. Any other movie, they can do anything in between. Whether or not they meant to do that, or if that's just what happens when you make the movie set in space. It's nice. I would also like to point out this is the 4th film in the franchise, just like Leprechaun 4 in space. So
Ooh.
They always go to space.
Go to space in 4. I don't know who else does it, but it feels like that's the good time to go.
Definitely. Yeah.
This was also
Jason went to space, I'm pretty sure. Right?
It was in 10,
Jason X.
but, I
Yeah.
don't know, it took him a little while.
Yeah.
This was also the last Hellraiser film that got a theatrical release.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they all went to video thereafter, right?
Yeah.
Now, was that because like the studios just weren't interested in giving it any more of a big release?
Yeah, and, you know, DVD had really taken off by part 5. You know, the box office receipts for 4 weren't great, but, you know, they did the classic thing where they cut the budget really low, and, you know, they filmed all they were going to film. Kevin Yeager was the director, and then it turned into an Alan Smithy film because of how much they took out of what he filmed, and he couldn't make what he wanted of his film, so he took his name off. But then they released that to theaters, and it had, you know, not the greatest of reactions, and you know, they took so much out of what he wanted to do, and yet were surprised that it didn't make a lot of money. So then they just started to go, well, DVDs are cheap. We don't have to worry about theatrical, and we'll make a lot of money selling DVDs. And that's what they did for the rest of the series.
Not unlike the HBO Max move that Warner Brothers did.
Yes.
You
How
know?
many more are there after this one?
Doug Bradley did 8, and then they've done 2 with someone else's Pinhead.
Hefty.
That's right. That was like the soft reboots of everything, right? When they did.
Yeah.
Friday
So
the
they can keep the rights.
This one was 96, so yeah, there's a lot of time between then and now.
Yeah.
And how 90s it is.
Yeah, that see, I divide this movie up into like 4 acts, right? You got the first act, which I think starts off really strongly with the space station, right? And the that fantastic Terminator-esque robot.
Save there's another movie in this movie. You get Terminator as well.
Yeah, exactly. And he's controlling him with his 2 power gloves. And he opens up the box, and then there's Pinhead, and then the stormtroopers come in, and
Starship Troopers.
The Starship Troopers.
Like Starship Troopers.
Oh, they do.
They do. Just coming back from a tour of insecticide, and I think that's like a great setup. And then he tells us the story of the creation of the box, where it's like hard transition to Victorian times. Now, the Victorian Act 2.
It's France, Victorian France. So I don't know if that counts as Victorian, but
that's true. I don't know. Well, it's of
That's
the time.
England.
it looks like the scene in Interview with the Vampire when Lestat's throwing grapes at Louis. Like
Mhm.
that's what this whole part is. This is the Interview with the Vampire segment for me. Just without vampires.
What did I write down? What's
People
his
raising
name?
demons.
The guy from Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, was it
I wrote his name down.
Adam Scott.
Adam Scott?
Greased,
That's his first
greased up in
his
90s.
first role.
Whoa.
My God, what a
great
first!
role.
Yeah, what a first one. And that's my favorite scene. I love the whole. I mean, I'm a stick for like gothic horror, and just the whole setup of like this guy gets commissioned to make this weird toy box, and then black magic just happens, and it just becomes this like insane ritual.
Don't forget about Mickey Cottrell, right? He plays the Duke, and he could give Darth Sidious a run for his money.
That's
in,
right. Yeah.
the creepy, pale, old psycho department.
He kind of looks like Gary Oldman Dracula.
That's what I said. I was like,
wig.
dude. Yeah, he just didn't lick the blade at the end of the flaying, but
He was,
Yeah, we
Mickey
get-
Cottrell was mostly a publicist, actually, I think was his main gig, but he was an actor in a few small parts, including some episodes of Star Trek.
Ooh.
It all comes back to Star Trek. As a big Trekkie nerd, I appreciated that little trivia thing.
Yeah. What series was he in? Was it TNG?
Yeah, TNG. Some random alien guy.
That whole thing, though, is just fantastic. That whole setup, de-skinning her and getting rid of the body. If you've made it this far and you haven't seen it, Parks and Rec Man brings a friend of his.
They ask her, oh, you've got, or I think they say that you've got nobody in your life. How wonderful is that? Welcome to our house in the middle of the night, to our sweaty meat party.
Our meatloaf casserole dinner.
That turns
Coming-
into maggots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of maggots in this movie.
The worm budget, very good in this film.
You don't like maggots? You're not going to like this movie, so don't do it.
Yeah, I like it. I like his sweaty syphilis marks from the Duke.
Oh.
It was just a great setup. I like when he finally does the incantations, and then you see the skin that they have hanging there just get filled up with the demon.
The skin with fingernails. Not sure how that works, but you know
I was
what?
wondering that myself.
It's extra weird and creepy that way, so I'm here for it. And we have the toy maker,
Right, we have the toy
Philippe,
maker.
who is played by the same actor who plays the Luke Skywalker motherfucker in the beginning, because they are all of the same bloodline.
Mm-hmm.
So Philippe de Marchant or something, which later becomes
Merchant.
when they moved to America, I guess. So Philippe is actually with his wife, who you get established that she's pregnant to continue the bloodline. When Merchant goes to deliver his awesome toy box that he thinks is just making a fun box in the middle of the night because his wife won't appreciate it. That's when he drops it off, and they're like, "Oh, cool, just in time." But he spies through the window and sees all these wonderful things happening in their sweaty meat party that he wasn't invited to, apparently.
I love that they answer the door in such a cool way, despite what's going on inside. They're just like getting the pizza delivery, and they're just like, "Yeah, cool, bro. What's up? Thanks."
They're
And then they
partying.
go back to debauchery.
It's just like a slight pause for their sweaty meat party. Or
Like, ooh, puzzle
Pizza's here. Hang on, guys. Oh, thanks. All right, let's go back to it.
I was a little confused, and maybe the superfans can explain this to me. How did the puzzle box get imbued with its dark powers? Did they commission artwork? Did they commission artwork for him to put on the box, do you think? Or did they just take a box that he made and imbue it? Or was it all him? You know what I mean? I was confused at that. And I was wondering if there were any answers in the world.
My take on it was that Delil, when he was doing his chanting and spell casting, was the one that invited the powers in. That's what I got.
Yeah, I think the box is sort of like a focus, like the magnifying glass or some sort of like conduit or teleportation device or something, like the thing that kind of connects the two and then also can control it, because they use the box to open and close that little gate all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know if they specified. He seemed pretty damn satisfied with himself about his box that he finished at midnight.
He was really excited about that.
So I don't know if it was something they had him make or he just came up with it. I don't think it really says or shows him working from blueprints.
The imagination,
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Adam Scott clearly had really no magical powers.
It was just all his ability to build.
Adam Scott's the assistant. He ends up killing his boss. Ooh, shady. Or they had a little too much fun and there was an accident. It's not really explained. Like a little kinky. Oh no, strangled him to death or whatever. He had like a barbed wire around his throat. Oh, and then more maggots.
The bondage party got out of control.
Yeah, you never know. They're kinky.
They are. I wish that they did a little bit more than one configuration, because you see multiple settings throughout at least the first two movies that I recall, especially in the second one where it becomes like this, the Sims, the silver diamond shape configuration. It would have been really interesting if you see him do these different twists and turns and you'd be like, look, it's my best creation. I designed this.
Now I want a Sims Hellraiser game, please. Like I want an expansion pack that's just the Hellraiser characters and set bites. Thanks.
Yeah. I mean, I guess they knew that was the case, because when he shows his wife, she walks in and she's like, oh, it really doesn't do anything after all.
Oh, no, that was so harsh.
It's so harsh.
I'm going where I'm appreciated, to the spooky house at midnight during Victorian times in Paris.
To Duke Syphilis.
The Duke Syphilis, who has no servants, apparently. They open their own door, which... Sure.
Yeah, that was a little suspect.
That's because they only have the budget for so many people to be in the film.
Yes.
But we do see Angelique get born from the flesh with the fingernails.
It's true.
Valentina Vargas.
Yeah, Valentina Vargas.
I just like her name a lot, and she was my favorite character in the whole film, so I just sing her name.
Also my favorite character in the entire movie. Angelique just kicks so much ass in this. And what an entrance she makes in 1800s France, right? In the Duke's Palace. Just kind of fills up like something from a Useness Society, and then just struts on out, and then just has a kink time with the two of them. Like when Merchant comes back to steal the puzzle box again, and it's covered in those green worms, and then the Duke is just kind of laying there with barbed wire around his mouth, and she's totally doing something weird to his face, just like smothering it while laying on top of him.
Dave, they were having sex.
That's a weird sex, feeding him cake naked.
It was France, really. I mean, come on.
Let them eat cake, I guess. They had to start somewhere, foodies.
I'm sorry for any French people listening, and I feel like a jerk now.
Well, it's not in French, so hey.
It was the not medieval, but whatever, Victorian.
Is there an appropriate term for Victorian France?
Well, Victoria wasn't the queen of France, so
yeah.
Right,
so
right.
Maybe.
But is there an equivalent?
I'm sure.
Yeah, history buffs, hit us up.
But yeah, we have John does come back. I'm sorry, he's probably Jean de Merchant. So he sees, oh no, I made a hell box. Oops, I got to do something. Goes to grab it from underneath the fattest worms I've ever seen. They're probably caterpillars or
Cute.
something.
Mm.
They are kind of adorable.
They're like from Sesame Street or something.
They look like little, like they're made of foam Muppets or something. He brushes them aside. They see what he's trying to do, and he does see Gary Oldman Dracula with the barbed wire. I get the impression that it was the apprentice guy being like, oh, who controls the box has the power. Really? Because he does kind of one of those to the camera, like, oh, I see. And then he's banging Angelique in the background, so he dies. The master is no longer the master, but they catch him trying to steal the box. They come in like putting robes on tastefully, like, oh, I still trying to steal back our box. We can't have that.
She's like, toy maker.
Toy maker, I know.
I have the quote here, actually. This is one of my faves. Toy maker, you have such pliant fingers.
Yes.
I want them to play with me.
Yes, I did write down such pliant fingers.
Such pliant fingers.
Such pliant fingers.
My goodness.
So things don't end well for him, and they don't realize that there's still a bloodline.
Dun, dun, dun.
Then we fast forward to the 1990s.
1996, I believe, was the year given.
Apparently, the bloodline didn't do anything in between of note. So just fast forward right to.
Just skip over all those descendants into this guy. We should also, I think, rewind a little bit and say that when Merchant, OG toy maker, discovers that the box is for evil, you discover that afterwards. Where were you this entire time? Do you not know who your employer is? He then makes a blueprint on how to destroy the demons.
The squiggle drawing where you're like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah,
Is
it's
that
like
for real? Like, is that a squig? Is that a like squiggles? What? But it is explained later on.
It is explained later on, but props for him for making it like not easy to interpret. You know, it's like, oh, this is how the light has to pass through this very specific setup, specific yet vague. And then he goes
That's what
back.
I call this movie, specific yet vague. I think that's one of the taglines. I'm gonna write that down.
Hellraiser 4. That's the precursor, right? He makes these designs, which at that point in time, the Cenobites don't know that he made the instrument of their demise. But then when we go into the 90s, you know, we establish, okay, this guy's a descendant because he's the same actor as the toy maker. And then he, you know, has the family and all that. And he's an architect, and that's established. And he goes to accept an award. And then we cut back to present day France. Angelique sees his face on an architecture magazine because I guess she's a fan of architecture, coincidentally. And she's like, I have to destroy Merchant's bloodline. Or at this point, it's now Merchant. Angelique is like, I have to ask Parks and Rec guy permission because that's the stipulation unless he gets in Hell's way. And boy, does he get in Hell's way.
Which they knocked you on the head with that earlier. Like, why didn't you remember? Hello.
Why didn't he ask more questions?
Dumb.
It's like, why specifically America?
You get comfortable with power over the century.
It also is super vague, like, don't get in Hell's way. How many times has he told her what to do? That's the whole thing. And she just says, well, I want to go to America. And he says no. And she's like, what did you say? Like, in 200 years, he's never said no to her before. She's never tried to test that to get out of it.
Right.
But sure.
Specific yet vague.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's that. I mean, I feel like if Hell was going to make a rule, it would be specific yet vague because that's the nature of the game, right? You make the wish, but you got to use the right words, just like in Leprechaun.
Or Wishmaster.
Or Wishmaster.
Which I got such a strong feeling like in the 90s stretch of this movie where,
Definitely.
you know, not necessarily granting wishes, just sexual assertions. Or lack thereof. She tears Parks and Rec boy, a new one. And his greasy hair. Not only does he get comfortable with power over time, he gets comfortable with his...
With not washing.
With not washing over time.
I think they were trying to go for that Interview with the Vampire look. K-Tron, I think you're totally right. And they totally missed the mark.
Interview with the Vampire was 1994, so...
Oh, was
Why
so
would they
cool.
not?
They give him that peasant blouse, and he's all like suave.
He does look like Lestat just hanging out.
Mhm.
And they also don't even acknowledge the fact that he's still young. He's still alive. They don't really say
Yeah, I was wondering that too.
he's imbued with power because he's hanging out with demons. But you can just assume that the magic just is there. You've already seen the other guy go through time as different people, so you're like, yeah, okay, whatever.
I'm chill with
And
that.
90s, I don't know if we said this, 90s Marchand is the same actor as future Marchand and past Marchand.
That's right.
Just to clarify.
With bad wigs that would rival any like Shaw Brothers movie.
Yeah.
Well, it does seem like
Ramsey.
he's shaved his head legitimately for the Luke Skywalker parts, which is good. He's not wearing a bald cap or anything. He was committed to it.
Right.
Bruce Ramsey was a Canadian actor. He was in a lot of Canadian stuff. And yes,
so does this
found him for Hellraiser 4. It's wonderful.
So does this make Hellraiser 4 a Canuxploitation movie?
Ooh.
Yeah. Possibly. I wouldn't rule it out.
The cast
is all I'm
seems
saying.
to be from all over. You know, you've got Valentine Vargas. I think she was from Chile. You've got Doug Bradley, English. I didn't really look into the other ones that much, but multi-international cast. You know,
Yeah.
exciting.
I do want to point out that the 1996 portion, when we get that opening with now John Merchant living in America and being an architect, and the building that he's designed, which has little bits of that lament configuration on the walls and things, that's actually a direct lift from the end of Hellraiser 3.
Oh.
Yes.
So Hellraiser 3 ends where the woman's hiding the box in a building being built, and that's this building. And that whole like overlap that they even tried to put that in there, they deserve some props for that, because how many times has a sequel just come out and been like, and on the next one, forget about what happened in the last one, here we are.
Right. Mike, I think I was talking to you about that very thing off air, where I distinctly remembered how Hellraiser 3 ended. And it was, just that. Like it insinuated that it would probably pick up where the lament configuration was more or less like in a building. And it could be like the configuration itself had to do with solving it in the space of the building. So when I saw it in this movie, I was like, okay, let's see where this goes. And it doesn't necessarily go in that direction. She, not to jump too ahead, but Jean Marchand has an award for his fantastic lament configuration-esque architecture, and he is accepting an award, giving his speech, which is particularly
sweaty. It's also sweaty and nervous.
Sweaty and nervous, anxiety-ridden. I love how they took the time to insert a microphone echo into it just to add to the awkwardness. Like, woo. And then that's when he meets Angelique,
who took the fastest plane from France over to see him make this wonderful, awkward speech.
Did she even need a plane?
That's a good question. I mean, at that point, she's free to do whatever she wants any old time.
She looks like she's dressed up to be in the cast of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yes.
She's got like this 90s corset on. And I'm like, oh man, she's about to kick some ass.
Yeah, the whole 90s scene.
He does. That Italian-looking man. He doesn't have a name, I don't think, in the movie.
Oh, the businessman where she bumps into him?
The businessman where she takes him down to the cellar and she's like, we don't need to have names, do we? And he's like, I love you.
Don't you like mystery?
And it doesn't go well for him, as we know.
No, she punches a hole through the cinder block where she finds the lament configuration, and then literally all hell breaks loose. And then we get our appearance from the one and only Pinhead, who makes quick work of this Italian-esque businessman. We'll just call him a dad-looking person. And then hellhounds are out. And then they have a very interesting conversation. He calls her princess.
Not in like a cute way. He's not like, what's up, princess? It's me.
Yeah, no.
It seems like
but it's not reverent either.
Just princess. Well, she got herself fucked up with these people. Like, she got herself done captured by these two idiots in France a while ago.
Right.
So he's sort of like, "So what you get, isn't it?"
Right. It's a total
I've never
Sandman
seen.
scenario. Yeah.
I have some input into that.
Yes, please.
Again, I was researching, what was intended versus what happened. There was supposed to be a different relationship between Angelique and Pinhead, where they were more rivals. Whereas in this one, the theatrical, it's more that Pinhead's the boss, and it was intended in more scenes were filmed where they were more adversarial. Mm-hmm. So there's that aspect. Also going back just a bit, there was a lot more connection to Hellraiser 3 that was in deleted scenes. So it wasn't just, digging the box out of the foundation pillar. There were other kind of flashback type things, particularly to do with Pinhead. But
okay,
yeah, so there was kind of you get glimpses of what was supposed to be that made it through. But I guess that relationship was changed a lot in editing.
Gotcha. I guess this is a good part to kind of get into the production of this movie, because Mike and Kai, every time I've talked to you about this, it kind of brings up if only the studio believed in it more or supported it more, then could have been even better than what it was. I don't know anything about that production history, so if you could shed some light on that, I'd appreciate it.
I mean, I don't know how Kevin Yeager was selected. He was in charge of it, and there was, again, at the beginning, it was supposed to be, take the success of part 3, which was a successful film, and then, capitalize on that. And then throughout, how the Hollywood machine rolls, and then they see your cut, and they see what you're filming and whatever, and then they decide that they're going to pull money out of it. They're not going to support, even though it's already filmed or almost filmed, they're not going to, go forward, let you deliver what you wanted to as a whole piece. And then you have to start cutting. And then when you have to start emergency cutting and rewriting, then, you're kind of in a doomed situation.
Funny you say that, because Mike, I was thinking, when I was watching the movie, I think even the first time, towards the end, I was like, what happened to Angelique? Why is she pushed into the background so much? She had such a strong presence in the beginning of the movie, and then at the end, it's to me not as strong. She becomes just like a Cenobite, sidekick. Not even, I don't know. It was kind of a disappointment.
Yeah. It was. She was part of the crew, rather than being Pinhead's partner.
Yeah.
And
or
even
rival,
with
which would have been more interesting.
Yeah. And there was more with her in the Victorian part. We keep calling it that. I know it's not that, but in that part of the film, there was more with her too. There, you can find some stuff online too. There's bits of it here and there on YouTube, and there was a part where when she had power, she was inviting a bunch of rich people over to the mansion and enticing them through strip to make more movements on the puzzle box. And in turn, getting them to open the box, and then they would all be slaughtered and pay fun. There were little things like that showed more of her character and her evil at that beginning stage too.
That is actually exactly what I would want more of. Notably, I should also pause here to say that, there's a lot of back and forth between the ship and the, we'll say, 1800s France section, right, where it kind of goes back and forth telling the story. And then, the spaceship is completely gone and when we go to the 90s. And then it abruptly comes back after what already kind of feels like a climax. For me, it felt like completely, what the hell is going on?
I realized when we were watching it for this, that the movie feels like an anthology.
Yeah, I had that thought too.
And it keeps going back to the wraparound.
Right. The 90s in particular, which I'll come right out and say was like my least favorite part of the whole thing. Ironically enough, I really like the sci-fi stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
It was my least favorite time period as well, to be honest.
yeah. You know, and I don't think like I mean, everyone rants and raves about the 90s aesthetic and how terrible it is. And, you know, I mean,
it has its time and place.
It has its time and place, but I feel like this suffers from it specifically. Like Candyman, it's ignorable and it kind of works for it. This one, it's just like the worst of the 90s kind of crammed in of like 90s production. Like you have like very odd lighting and all of this, and I don't think like the pacing of it helps because I forget where we were in talking about the plot. I think we
got the speech and the punching through the wall
and the punching through the wall,
sassy corset,
and the sassy corset, right? It eventually goes into this subplot love story between Angelique and John,
yeah,
right? John Merchant. I don't know why. I don't know why it was coalescing the way it was.
I bet it is exactly as Mike was saying.
His ancestors had pliant fingers that she was interested in. And it's the same dude. Apparently the bloodline doesn't matter who you marry. It's the same. You just reproduce the same child every so many years.
It all comes down to kink. That's
it could be.
She almost puts a spell on him, like convincing him, you know, looking really close in each other's eyes and convincing him that he does know her.
Mm.
And to us, it's like, yeah, you know me. And we're like, that's what? How are you going to believe that? But he does. And, you know, guys are dumb.
He seems like, you know, he does kind of fall for the, ooh, sexy lady likes me. But his wife is cool.
He's been thinking about her.
He's already got a child. His bloodline has already been established. He's got the little boy, and I don't know the actor, but I've seen that little chubby-cheeked kid in other things.
So many things.
He was in Mick Garris's The Shining.
That's probably it. Yeah,
And
we see
quintessential 90s, like mushroom-haired blonde kid. You know, cute cherub.
His wife was in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2.
Okay. The kid is actually on the floor playing with Connects specifically. So we see the establishment that this bloodline is good with building stuff. So even as a kid, he's like building a complicated little machine on those little plastic sticks.
True.
Not Legos, but Connects, which is like the next step up, kids. So he's a little genius. We know that.
True, which is worth mentioning that Connects are significantly sturdy and hard to destroy. And when Pinhead shows up, you know, and tries to kidnap the little boy, and then John comes home and the house is weirdly disarrayed, and then notably the Connects Ferris wheel is completely destroyed.
Pinhead sat there and just took apart each one. It was like
piece by piece. He's like, I have such misery to show you, little boy.
Yeah, maybe he was screwing with him. He's like, kid, I'm gonna mess up your dad so bad because your dad's trying to bang my princess friend or whatever. I don't know. And the kid's like, no, Mr. Pinhead, don't take apart my Connects.
This is our first appearance of Pinhead. We're about 35 minutes into the film. And what do we think? What do we think about him? What are his motives? How do we feel about the man?
Angelique Hulk punches the wall, takes out the bot. How did she know it was there? Did it call to her? We don't know. She just knows it's there. She's there for John because she sees his picture in the newspaper. Maybe she reads that the building is box-esque and thinks maybe he buried the little Menka figure in the basement. Don't know. But then she opens it, right? She opens it with the blood of the dude, the dad dude. But to what end, I'm not sure. Why does she open that box?
Well, the dude opened it because that's what she wanted him to do.
Yeah.
And then Pinhead shows up, and I'm assuming she wanted to open that portal to hell. Because, I mean, if you think about it, she's known about the box longer than anybody.
Yeah.
Who's still around, you know. And, like, that's one interesting thing is that Pinhead, one of his lines to her is he says, hell is more ordered than your time.
Yes.
Which you know, and we already know this from seeing the other Hellraiser films, but she's a lot older than Pinhead. And she's been a demon longer than he has. But, you know, yet he's the boss. So that's a really interesting story I wish would be explored.
Absolutely. That's why I liked Hellraiser 2, or at least liked about it, its attempt to explain the Hell dimension. This one, it definitely leaves a lot more questions, which I'm not like opposed against in a movie, but they're so narrative driven. It would have been nice to, and there's so many flashbacks. Like, again, you said it's an anthology film, essentially. It would have been nice to kind of have a little bit more discourse between them and figure out who she was. Like, even in like, old timey France scenes, what were they summoning? Did they know what they were summoning? Who was she? Is she actually a princess of hell? And, Pinhead got in charge because there was a vacancy there,
The fan fiction must be written.
The twin Cenobite and Pinhead must be shipped.
Please let me speak of the twins.
Yes, I love the twins.
That's actually not too far, right?
The 90s segment is...
You have the sex, they have sex, and there's a spinning bed. And then we get to the twins. I'm sorry. I had to interject because it literally is a spinning bed. And I'm like, I've never seen that before.
It's quite a set piece.
It's a dream sequence still, too, right? He's not actually cheating on his wife yet, so we can't hate him or anything. He's just dreaming about it. Can't fault a man for his dreams.
And I don't think he ever...
I don't think he does.
I don't think he does. I think it's all in the dream sequences, probably caused by her. But anyway, so there's the sexy time spinny bed, and then there are these twin security guards. I don't think they're officers outright, right?
Kai is taking it from here.
Please. This is very important to me. As one of the many aspects of this film that I love, the 90s sequence is probably the slowest. It is probably the longest, I would think. The longest straight, like, here's some bits, and this is modern times for the film. So this is like, here we are now with hanging out with Pinhead. Angelique opens the box. The Cenobites are hanging out in the building, like, just cause. I think Pinhead says, you know what this building is? You see this stuff? Like, this building is a box. This is a way bigger portal. We can bring a lot more stuff over, Angelique. And she's like, yeah, whatever. I'm trying to bang the architect. That's fine. So he's hanging out, and she's like, yeah, don't worry. We'll get to that. I'm busy. I got a thing going. I'm going to go do the spin bed dream. And Pinhead's at home petting doves, and he's like, you know what? I need some more. And he's got his little puppy with him. That skinless dog is awesome. That could have easily been some sort of CG creature, and it is not. It's a practical effect.
He's a chatterer, too.
He's a chatterer, yeah.
That was me chattering, sorry.
Yeah, he's got a little puppy who eats the dove that Pinhead is petting while he's doing Godfather, like, I'm bored of doing stuff. Let's kill stuff. And that brings us to the twins, or as I wrote down, and twins.
I wrote twinning.
My question is, who hired twins to work at the same time? I mean,
same question I had.
When you're doing a security job, there's usually not many. Who's going to hire two twins to work the same beat, the same time? But
the dangerous office building, Kaya.
I suppose. And maybe it was John Merchant himself was like, yeah, whatever. Why don't we have some twins?
They're a package deal.
They are. And they are dumb as hell. They are blonde himbo twins working the beat. And I love them so much. They take a turn and they're like, that's not a door that should be here. And we're like, go down the door. Yeah, they of course do. And the door's filled with chains and spooky stuff because it kind of looks like the Halloween section of a Party City exploded in parts of the building as the Cenobites are slowly taking over. So you see like just a regular old hallway with like chains and like a body and like a little skeleton or something. And they're like, golly, this isn't in the stuff. Let's put our flashlight on. And I think they do separate and come back. Because one of them does say, like, oh, my batteries died, bro. Oh, too bad, bro. Let's stick together, bro. And they run into... Do they run into Pinhead? I know they run into somebody in the hallway. I think it's Pinhead.
Right?
Yeah. What do they say, Jenny? What do they say?
Don't make us put some pain on you.
Which is what normal people say to somebody dressed completely in leather and pins in his head and bleeding all over the place that you find in the hallway that's not in the building.
But before that, too, when they meet up again, they say, let's never separate again, which is some excellent foreshadowing.
Wonderful foreshadowing. And then again, something completely normal grown men say to each other. I mean, twins are close. And do they have to remind you every 5 minutes how close they are? These twins do. Just so you know.
There's also
magic.
that wonderful observation of them being like, freeze! Hey, he's got pins in his head.
Oh, yeah.
Because what else are they going to say? And I love them. They're so charming and like apropos of nothing that this whole thing happens just so you can see them become Cenobites. And it's like, I promise you'll never be apart. And then
sweet of him,
the weird little Iron Maiden mechanism sort of like lemonade squeezes their heads together. And then the little corkscrew that comes between them and twists their flesh and makes them kind of like swirled around together, and they kind of merge into one. So you see a little bit of CG there, but not a lot. Like,
it's gorgeous.
They were really holding themselves back with the CG for a 1996 horror film. As I think 3 had more, I feel, that, looked worse. So maybe they knew, like, man, maybe we're not to do so much. Or that the director was a special effects guy, and he's like, let's not do the CG. I don't want that.
It's not ready yet, 1996.
It's not ready yet. And I think it holds up pretty well, even in that scene. Like, you see them kind of blur and warp together, but it's not too jarring. It's not too, like...
That's the most complicated Cenobite, what would you say, like a...
Creation?
A birth?
Birth, yeah.
It's very complicated. You got squeezy things, you got drills, you got that middle thing twisting them together. I could see Pinhead reading the instruction manual for this one beforehand and just being like, all right, this goes here, this goes here.
Speaking of the birthing, I'm always curious what the blue liquid is that they insert.
Oh, yeah, you had those too. You had tubes sticking into them with red and blue liquid. Ew, that was a good scene. That was good. Some good body horror.
A little bit of this set you right.
It was formaldehyde.
Formaldehyde.
No, formaldehyde.
Formaldehyde.
It was the black cherry and blue raspberry Slurpee. 7-Eleven.
I just love that whole scene, and it doesn't belong in there at all, but I love that it exists. It's very fun and like silly. It's jokey because these twins are stupid as hell, and you can't wait for them to die. And when they do, you're like, woohoo! Oh, but they're all twisted together. Even better, they're sticking around.
No, this scene was definitely a highlight for me. Again, like all the body horror is like top notch in this movie.
And the Cenobites, from this film, nothing's going to touch the Cenobites from 1 and 2. But the Cenobites from 4 are way better than 3.
Yeah.
The ones, and when you watch part 3 and even Pinhead says that they're shadows of his former troops, even he's saying that they're bad Cenobites. So in part 4, they got a lot better.
I agree. They look cool. And adding the twins is, I don't know, twins is always a cool, interesting thing for me. I just like that trope, and that they threw in some twinness. And with the promise, I promise you'll never be apart again, says Pinhead, and he like delivers. Like, he's not lying. He's, I guess it's one of those, you get what you wish for. I never want to be apart. So you're twisted together forever.
He was there for business alone.
And they don't seem like, ow, it hurt. But once they're together, they're not like, oh wow, I'm so sad. They're like, all right, finally, I get to be in that bro forever, man. This is the coolest. Can't wait.
It's everything they wanted.
Right.
But on the subject of Cenobites and Pinhead, let's talk about the man himself, or the demonic hell creature themselves. Pinhead makes a grand entrance, a little bit more of a chatty Cathy this time around. I mean, maybe not as much as 3, since it's all about him.
Yes, I was so super surprised. As I haven't seen 3, I was so surprised at how much he was talking. I was like, usually he's the strong and silent type.
Right. Like very few lines, but this one he like really kind of has a character and a little bit of ambition and emotion. And it's interesting because the line, "Do I look like someone who cares what God thinks?" By the way, happy Easter, everybody. We are recording this on Easter. But that line, I remember Doug Bradley specifically talking about it on a panel at Rock and Shop, which is a local or former, used to be, no longer, a horror movie convention in Worcester that we were all volunteers for. I remember seeing him at a panel, and he specifically called out that line and said, when I was working with Wes Craven, he would say, do less. And he would constantly tell Doug Bradley that. And then he used this particular instance to say, when I gave that line, I feel I used too much emotion. And I would honestly think that it would be scarier if I just said it more nonchalant with less emotion. And that was in my mind watching Pinhead this entire time, where I'm just like, yeah, he really is hamming up the emotion a little bit. He's kind of pulling a Jeffrey Combs or like a Vincent Price. You know, he's filling the room with his, you know, ambient personality and all of that. And I do kind of wish he like held back a little bit. But, you know, that's just me. What do you guys think?
We're watching Bloodraiser, man. What do you want held back? We opened with Star Wars. We went to Interview with the Vampire. Now the 90s segment probably needed a bit more oomph. And plus, he's pissed off because Angelique is telling him hold back, and he is. So, like, I like that she kind of comes out being a badass and sort of like move over Pinhead. Here's Angelique, and it takes that long for Pinhead to show up. That like he's mad because he's like number two to her almost. Like she's, you know, she's the one that's kind of running the show through the whole film, and he's like, I can't take this anymore. I'm not doing it. I like that. This is someone who brings it out in him. I felt it more like she's a rival enough to him where he's like getting to that point.
He's losing it.
He's losing it a bit. Usually he's dealing with humans, and he's like, oh, yeah, this again. I'm so much better than you. This is not, but she's like
bored.
Yeah, she's kind of pissing him off. Plus, it's 90s bombastic 1996. We got to be a little bit more in there. He's in an office building. Like, you know, if he held back, it would be like he's having a news conference. And I think it needed it a bit more for what they were doing. And I did notice it watching it again, but I didn't mind it. I thought it was appropriate for what was going on.
Gotcha. All right, yeah. What do you think, Mike?
I think I didn't mind it at all. And when the trailer hit, that line is in the trailer. And that's the line that popped me watching it. When, like, because it's a very powerful statement too. Mm-hmm. And also it was like, you watching it on the screen and you go, whoa, like it is a different kind of emotion from him. And, you know, yeah, I do like the traditional one-tone Pinhead, but if something's going to make him be emotional like that, then that's got to be something I want to see. And this is the part of the franchise where it had become, Hellraiser was Pinhead. It wasn't anything else. That was the franchise that they were building. So it's kind of an evolution of the character. And it also, you can tie that in with the less Clive Barker was involved, the more emotion Pinhead started to get. But then, like, starting with part 5 and going on, he's in the movie less, because from part 5 onward, they were taking existing scripts going around Hollywood and turning them into Hellraiser films. So they had a shoehorn Pinhead in there. So he's barely in the movie, just like the original. And so it's almost like they looked at it as going to Doug Bradley and going, play it how you're supposed to play it. We don't know. And so he would go back to how he played it in part 1. And, he said that to me too, because I had him write that line on a photo at Rock and Shock. And he told me that same story. It was how he didn't think he should have had emotion in it. But I thought it was great.
Did you tell him?
It's interesting.
Doug, I disagree. I think it was good the way it was. Did you say that to Doug Bradley?
No, I did not.
Sorry, go ahead, Jenny.
It's okay. It's interesting because now just thinking about it and talking about it with you guys, also he's under threat. He's never been under threat like this before. So he's stressed out, man. We know what happens to him in the end, and he's facing this threat, this bloodline that he can't for some reason they can't stamp out, even though it's just a little kid. He could have killed him. But like he's feeling real pressure from this situation. So that's another reason maybe that he's emoting more than usual.
And I mean, remember too from the original version is he's kind of in a war with Angelique. Which makes the space part very interesting because it's, you know, it seems that he won that war. But in the 90s, you know, yeah, he was kind of battling for not control of Hell, because they're certainly not in control of it, but control of the Cenobites.
I think he says to her, he says to Angelique, which is kind of confusing to me, you either work with me or you work for me. Does that make sense?
I guess it's as equals or under me. He's not even giving her the option of being better.
Yeah, okay, I see.
So he's already like, nope, you can't touch this, baby.
There's no room for improvement in Pinhead Incorporated.
So while all the sexy things and Pinhead being pissed off is happening, we did see that the drawing from Philippe that he made of the thing that can catch a Cenobite, can catch a demon. That blueprint is, or it's not really a blueprint, it's a drawing. The drawing is on the wall, hanging in this office building. Because, of course, what do you do with your priceless family heirlooms? Bring them to work and stick them on the wall. Maybe it was a reproduction. We don't know. And there's actually a point where Angelique shows up at work. We get to see a nice little computer clickety-clack. I love seeing old computers in movies. So you get to see the computer that John is rocking at work at architect office. And I guess he works in the building he designed, because of course that's what happens. Someone hires you to have an office building built for your architectural firm or whatever, and then give a speech there. So he shows her, like, she asked about the picture on the wall, like, she does one of those, like, ooh, I don't like it. Like she's looking at a cross or something, like, ooh, I don't like it. And then, oh, what you got here? And he's like, let me show you. Boots up his floppy disk or whatever. And then he shows her a little animation of what the box is supposed to do. That's when we kind of get to see what the squiggles in between these, like, 4 panels are. And it's supposed to
together.
Trap light, he says, which I think is there is science about being able to trap light, and I don't know if they can or can't. I know I've heard somebody talking about it before, and all I could think was like, Hellraiser IV taught me about this. Yes. And it's supposed to be like a perpetual light box with mirrors inside where you would capture, like if you were to beam light, it would bounce off of a mirror, as you know. If it's in a box full of mirrors, it would go forever. But I think, and even in the movie, John says it fizzles out. He can't get it to keep going. And I think that is the problem with the real science of that. I don't recall. But Angelique, she she kind of looks away like, ugh, I don't even like looking at the picture. What does it do? She's like, interesting. And then little like sweat drop, panic sweat, like, all right, I'll keep this in mind. Yeah. I wonder if this will come into play later.
Which I should mention, granted we started this at the end, but at the beginning, the first scene we see is of the satellite, which looks suspiciously like the Lemon configuration, or the space station rather.
Yeah, something's up.
And the first time, because this is me and Jenny's first time watching this, I remember I turned to you, Jenny, and I'm like, I bet you $5 that's going to turn into a Lemon configuration at some point in this movie. The patterns aren't just a coincidence. It wasn't the Lemon configuration as we know it. It was something, the trap light that we would later find out, which I thought was a good twist. Although I still can't make heads or tails of that schematic of the light thing. But
I don't know how else you would draw it, though. The computer animation, you can see it. Drawing it, they'll have to send a few artists. Maybe we can commission a few people to be like, what would you draw if you were to draw the Lemon configuration as a light box? Let's just see what they do. At this point in the film, and I can't remember exactly when, like, the sex dream came in, if it was before or after computer time.
It was before the twins.
Yeah.
Before the twins, all right. So we do, fast forward to, like, I don't remember how Pinhead gets he just decides like, I'm gonna get this shit going, and goes to the house and steals the kid. Is that what happens?
Yeah, I mean, they have a conversation about, pleasure and pain. Angelique is all about pleasure and passion and all of that. And he's like, oh, and this is like, this conversation happens directly after the twins, where he turns to her and he goes, you see, princess, something is the coin of the underrealm. And I am going to show you how effective it is.
Pain?
Yeah,
pain would be the coin of the realm, yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that's when he's hold my beer.
I have the quote.
Please.
Human acquiescence is as easily obtained by fear as by temptation.
There we go. So they want to convince John to make a bigger box, build the box, open they need him to do something. I don't remember what that is. At this point, I didn't care.
Got a little bit. I was very confused too, to be honest. And I've seen it twice.
Yeah, I think it was, at least I assumed it meant to convince him, or at least capture his soul and therefore his intellect in building a giant box for them.
They want to let the demons out.
Yeah, they want a bigger gateway that they can control.
Right, yeah. Okay.
But I think he's a little bit preoccupied in doing the opposite and building the big light trap box, which, he doesn't get to. But, his bloodline does.
Well, they get the kid. The wife comes home, and I can't remember her name. I'm so sorry that I'm only calling her character the wife. But he probably says it once in the whole film anyway. So she comes home. She's the one who actually finds Pinhead with their son, and then they go to the office, right? Is that what happens?
Yeah.
I can't remember. She's there with the kid. Both of them are there when John, shows up, kicks down the door, and is like, oh no, my family got captured while I was having sex dreams.
And they did that when he arrived home too. It turns really weird slow-mo for a minute. When he came in and was looking around, and then he ran upstairs, it was just a bizarre slow-mo thing, and then it went back to regular.
Yeah, me and Jenny realized that too. They might have only had one take of that, and they wanted to slow down the pacing a bit for whatever reason. You could have just left it at the same pace, but it might have been too quick for their liking, or maybe they wanted to give it a more dreamlike sequence. Who knows? But that's definitely a tactic I use in editing trailers and stuff. You actually see it in Vampire Circus. Is a movie we just watched in the recent Midnite Romero Society meeting, where they cut to the long shot of the circus with all the torches, but if you look really closely on the torches, they are in slow motion. But it only happens for a split second because they needed an establishing shot to let you know that you're back. So I don't know. It's a regular technique, but it was definitely very obvious in that scene running up the stairs.
The wife of the 90s merchant, whatever, is Kim Myers, played Bobby Merchant. She was written to mirror Larry from the first film, both of whom suspect their spouse's infidelity, which seems to be a running theme through Hellraiser, right? Those sins, those infidelities.
Those lustful passions of people, those kinks.
Yeah, and then John's like, he's got to fight. He's got to save his family. Pinhead's like, do what I want, or I don't know, feed your kid to the dog. At some point, they send the kid in the elevator alone, right, to leave. They're like, don't worry, I'll protect you, son, says John. Puts his kid in the elevator of the Hellraiser building, and then just pushes the button and says, goodbye, you'll be safe. Don't take your mom or me with you. Bye. And then the parents, I think, do they split, or they just get split up?
They do, yeah. They all split up. It's the silliest moment.
Don't worry, the demons can't catch us if we split up. They don't have magic powers. The mom has to fight the dog, which I feel is a very Jurassic Park sequence. When the kids are hiding from the velociraptors in the kitchen, this whole scene of her running away from the dog, and she blocks the door with the big conference table. It felt very Jurassic Park to me at that point.
And how did that dog die? Oh, no, never mind. That's later.
Well, it got blown up eventually, right?
Yeah. I was like,
so.
Wait, was that then, or was that the other time?
I think, does she kill it? I think she has a good badass moment with this dog where I'm like, damn, John, will I even having sex dreams about Angelique? This lady's pretty awesome.
Yeah, seriously.
She holds her own for a good portion. She's, running around and fighting Cenobites that she just realized
And
were a thing.
She can use the box. Like,
Yeah, she does everything in the night. She does everything. She kills the Hellhound, and then she also sends Angelique and Pinhead back to hell, if I remember.
Yep.
Because
she saves the day.
yeah, because skip ahead, John ends up just getting decapitated by Pinhead.
The slowest decapitation scene I've ever seen. It was like,
But so good. Like
It is cool.
like that spear, that like scorpion spear where it goes through like his throat and then it springs open to other things, so it looks like an anchor and then just peels back.
It's beautiful. It's wonderful.
So good. But yeah, like no, she just steps in and is like, oh, my husband's dead. Oh well, and then just blasts the light that opens up the portal from Evil Dead 2.
She's protecting her little one. She's protecting the future savior, the bloodline.
The bloodline, right? Like the wives are not getting the credit here for this bloodline film. They're just carrying the seed, and then also coming in when all the husbands die, stupid deaths. Like, come on.
Yeah, seriously. They like even the wife, the French sequence. She goes to save him. He doesn't even look that bad, but I guess is dying, and then she's just like, okay, I'll go. That's the end of her.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye. Take care. Well, that's the end of the 90s scene, and then we go back to the spaceship where we meet up with Rimmer.
I was definitely like, her name is Rimmer. And then I was like, no, don't.
Oh, 90s names.
Right. I mean, it probably sounded really badass on paper, but to say it out loud, I was like, what's her name? And they said it again, and I was like, Rimmer.
They're trying to go all aliens up in that.
Oh, yeah. It's a very 90s, like you said, Starship Troopers looking sci-fi sequence. And I love low budget sci-fi just to see what they're going to do. Like, what do they do with it if they don't have $50 bazillion to, just create the thing that they want? What do they work with what they have? And I think that everything looked pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
It looked like other things you've already seen, but like it looked cool. Like I want to walk around on that spaceship and see what it's like.
Can I interject with one more funny line? From,
please.
When
Please do.
Pinhead was just about to kill the 90s merchant, he goes, "Stand your ground, family man."
Oh, yeah. That's my favorite line. Because he sounds like...
That was beautiful.
Are you guys familiar with the actor Matt Berry at all? He was on the IT Crowd.
I pretty much just sounded like him.
Yeah, he was in the Mighty
I did an
Boosh.
impersonation.
Oh, he was in Kai, you would know because he was in the show What We Do in the Shadows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that
He played
is
Laszlo.
You play Laszlo.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. That is a Matt Berry line if I've ever heard one.
Family man.
Family man.
I just thought it was cute.
Which I don't know how much of a family man John Merchant really is. I mean, he's being not faithful to his wife in his dreams, and he's hanging out with Angelique in real life. Like he's totally attracted to her and like letting her hang all over him in his office. Yeah. He just doesn't want his kid to die. And I'm like, oh, yeah, family man is a little bit of a silly line, I suppose. But coming off of Hellraiser 3, there's a lot of like family man like stuff going on in that. So I don't know if it's referencing any of that or it's just a silly line they left in the film.
I think everything exploded at the end of the 90s segment too. Like everything exploded. All of the like set pieces exploded. All of the lament figurations exploded. I was like, all right.
The building itself, right? Which did the building become a puzzle box at some point, or did they just kind of hint that maybe it could be?
Yeah, hints.
Yeah, okay. I think it was just implied with all of the moving paintings.
Art pieces, which is totally normal and regular, and that's what my office building would look like if I architecturally designed my own office building.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I definitely have just stuff with gears moving constantly. Would not become old or easily broken at all.
I don't know. Yeah, the maintenance for that stuff would not be expensive at all.
But it's called Disney World, guys.
Then we do go back to the year 2127.
And this is where the movie cooks from here on out. It just moves.
It like Dave said, it was very like the 90s sequence ends and you're like, oh, there's the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And then, then the space pops back up and you're like, oh, this was a story in a story. I forgot.
Would you say, K-Tron, that we were Back to the Future?
We do go back to the future.
Damn, she did
And
it.
it sort of like kicks the door down into your psyche to remember, all right,
Yeah.
we started this movie somewhere, here we are. And it does cook, Mike. I think it grabs it gets some legs here.
I didn't think it kicked at first because they showed the same exact footage from the beginning of the movie, but they added a few little slices in, and you're like, why are they showing the same footage? Oh, I get it, because he was talking to the Cenobites the whole time. Blah, 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 blah. They had to like sew those together for you.
Right.
Well, at this point, they knew you would have forgotten about the beginning of the film, so that's why they just do the beginning again.
Yes, the future merchant, in fact, was talking to Pinhead and wasn't just talking to himself.
See, I look at it like the beginning was the tease, and this was the entire show.
I like that.
We did get to see the robot again. That was exciting.
Very exciting. We get to see Terminator again. Open the box.
I do like what Pinhead says about the robot, where he.
I've got it written down.
Oh.
The remnants of a most unsatisfying victim, he says.
Aww.
Because somehow a robot can open the box. I didn't know if that counted, but apparently in future times, Dr. Merchant, as he is known now, that is the future iteration of Philippe and John, he figured it out. He worked the little gloves. Maybe because he's the one on the other end of the gloves, the desire is then pushed into the robot that he wants to open the box. And it does. And we do see the Cenobites, they come out and they look at him all angry from down below in this little, reminds me of the room that the X-Men practice in, the danger room.
I was wondering, I was like, what's keeping them in there? Like, how
the door?
Because that stopped them before, right?
They break the door down and they come out.
Runes in the walls. Like, what is keeping them in there? I was wondering that.
They don't seem to escape, because that's when we see that John gets arrested or whatever for whatever his crime is. I don't know if we even know.
And a little bit further, the security guard can hear a little kid in there. Like, you can't hear shit in there. Those walls are like 20 inches thick.
That's magic.
Okay.
They're playing a trick on them.
It's kung
Playing a
fu.
trick. Yeah,
It's
so
just Hellraiser kung fu. All right.
Right.
we did see him get arrested. That's when he's talking to Rimmer and telling her the story. And now we see a little bit more that not only did the robot explode, but the Cenobites are out and they're in that room. And for some reason, they can't escape. Whatever it is, it's something about the room.
Right, and his crime was he stole the space station that he designed.
Oh.
I guess he told the entire crew to leave, and so he could summon the Cenobites and then destroy them. And just like Stormship Troopers, they fuck everything up.
Well, because who are you going to believe? This shaved-headed Luke Skywalker, very he's got like a Zen thing going. He's wearing robes, very Luke Skywalker-esque, like Skywalker in Return of the Jedi. Like, he's all in black. He's wearing soft robes.
He's got all the French artifacts in his room.
As you do.
They've survived all this time.
He's got very pretty eyes and a very pouty mouth. I just want to point that out. He's just very soft looking, I think.
He is.
Which I like as, like, the guy that's got to fight Pinhead is this very, like, gentle. He comes off very gentle soul. And at this point, he knows his whole family history. He knows every merchant has fucked this thing up since the beginning of time, and he's ready to try to fix it. The Cenobites are hanging out, and all the troops come in, and they are very much a stark contrast to him, where he's all like Zen soft monk boy. They come in all with the gear and like, we don't believe your crazy talk, you crazy guy. There's no such thing as demons. And that's how they start fucking the shit up.
Right, and then Rimmer repeats the line I don't believe in hell, and Merchant goes, "Oh no, hell believes in you."
Yeah, that was
Hell believes in you.
Hell believes in you, and you're about to find out. And then it becomes Alien, and they're picked off one by one in glorious fashion. My favorite scene is when the twins come back and they just sandwich the dude.
Oh yeah, the society hug.
The society hug, they shunt him, they split apart, and then they go Who was it? It was
For
the
whoever's listening, that's Society by Brian Usna.
Brian Usna.
Yeah. What
Another
was that,
great
the
one.
80s? That was early 80s?
88
The most
maybe? I don't know.
perfect body horror movie you'll ever need to watch in your life.
Yeah, it
Highly
saves it all
recommended.
until like the last like 15 minutes, and it's all glorious.
Mm.
But yeah, I think it was like what the Antonio Banderas lookalike, where he just goes in and he can't. Is that the one, or was it the other guy?
I don't remember who it is.
No, Antonio Banderas. Merchant gives him the box off screen, right? He's like, guns aren't going to protect you, but I know something that will. And then he forgets how to use it. And then Angelique is like, oh no, take your time. I want to see this. And it just fails miserably.
Now she's back and she's a Cenobite now, right?
Mhm.
She's full on Cenobite.
She's got a great split skull, like where the
Yes.
skin is stretched. I wanted
She's-
a little more gore on her. She was a little bit too pretty for me. I was like, I wanted it to be like bloody and nasty, but it was very cleanly surgical.
I did think like she's a very pretty Cenobite, but I think it fits her character too. Like
Yeah, she's the
she
princess.
probably was like, yeah, all right, I'll get gross and stuff, guys, and back to hell, whatever. But it almost
a little
seems
blush.
like she did it on purpose. Like she's still very sensual and very beautiful. Like she can still seduce her way through humans if she
mirror.
needs to. Through the
Remember
mirror.
the
yeah.
mirror slice scene? That was great.
A great little bit of stop
So
motion for that
simple.
too.
Yeah, so simple but so effective.
And I wonder, like I headcanon, like she's working for Pinhead now, it seems like. Like he's calling the shots. She's dressing like the crew, you know, she got the cool leather outfit, you know, the gang jacket on, I suppose, their leather motorcycle jackets. She's in the group.
X-Men spandex. Yeah.
But I felt like maybe her beauty would be something that she'd keep for herself because she wants to. Maybe she's holding on a bit. Her love of the merchants for no reason at all. Because they build a cool box with their pliant fingers.
Well, I feel like at this point, Pinhead's finally invested, right? Because they find out that the Merchants have this plan to destroy them, right? So this is the final showdown, we can say. Assuming that there wasn't like a bunch of other showdowns beforehand and that happened off screen in the past or between the 1990s and the 21,000s. But
2147.
2147.
2127, sorry.
27. But in this one, like
humans are gonna be around in 2127. We're gonna ruin this Earth by then.
That's why we're on the space stations doing demon work.
Yeah, but in the last half, I feel like Pinhead was finally invested. It went from like the rivalry between him and Angelique, and then he finds out what Merchant has been up to. Something Angelique either recently found out in the 90s or was always keen to. Her vendetta is his vendetta. Is kind of what I took away from it. Because he doesn't want to get destroyed.
I was bummed out. I wanted more from her.
Me too.
Yeah, I think I look at it a little differently. I look at it that like they're not going to appear until the box gets open. That's because that's what they do. They're not. I mean, he was a little more in this movie, but they're not really emotionally driven. They're doing their job. So when he sees who opens the box, then yeah, he remembers all of the history. But I don't think it was necessarily like we got to get those merchants kind of thing through time. I think it was, it's you again. All right, let's continue, this battle. And he's always going to think that he's going to win.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. He has in the past with all these bumbling idiots before anyway. So what does he care? A couple centuries have gone by.
It's true. It's just like a drop of sweat to him or a drop of blood. It's just like, yeah, whatever.
Till he's trapped in a box.
A box of light. And,
so I think all the soldiers die except for Rimmer, right? Everybody's an idiot and everybody gets killed by a demon because we want to see a few more bodies get, slaughtered in this film. So,
how horrifying to be on a space station with the Cenobites loose. At least when you're on Earth, you can kind of run somewhere. When you're on a space station, you are screwed.
It does have that that sci-fi horror kind of you get a very brief glimpse of that claustrophobic horror kind of thing when you're trapped there, and can't escape. So like you can't just like run out the door because you're dead there too. But it almost, you do kind of get that with the Cenobites too. Like they're also trapped on the space station. I was kind of thinking like, are they like, oh, cool, like people can summon us in space now. You don't really get to see them react one way or the other to just being somewhere. They're just playing it cool. Like, oh, whatever. Are we in space now? Been there.
Well, imagine if there was like other worlds or dimensions that also trip the Cenobites. Imagine if it was like Star Trek just happened to find the limit configuration and then one of the weird species just opened them up.
Yeah, sure.
I imagine that is where they exist, where they just kind of visit. Now I'm really expanding the universe here. They've probably seen it all, and they're like, oh, we're back here. I also imagine that there's other posses that Pinhead doesn't lead, but I could be wrong. That's Apocrypha maybe, but that would be nice to see like other Union leaders perhaps. But we can't neglect to mention how Merchant punks Pinhead.
Hologram.
With a hologram.
Yeah, it's great. I didn't see it coming. Even watching it again, I completely didn't remember. He's there, and you get that whole, like, oh, it's the final showdown, and he tells Rimmer, like, get to safety, go, I'll handle this shit. And we see her, like, in an elevator, of course. That's where he leaves everybody to go to safety. Get in the elevator, you'll be fine. He's there with Pinhead saying, I trapped you, we got you now. And you sort of, I think that's when, like, the spaceship starts kind of closing up, and you sort of see, like, the whole thing is a big lament configuration or a big puzzle box, and that drawing is going to start coming to life. I think that they start talking. I think I wrote down a line, and I think this is when it comes up. Pinhead says, I'm so exquisitely empty. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's so good. It's such a wonderful line. He's like, I feel nothing. I wasn't certainly yelling in a conference room 20 minutes ago. I feel no emotion. And just sort of to ask him, like, are you afraid to die? Because you're about to, baby. Mm-hmm. And then, the little hologram goes away. There's John. You get a little video screen just to let him know. He's sitting next to Rimmer doing like a little thumbs up, like, hey, see ya, bitch. We're not in the closing up building. Adios.
You've been hologrammed.
Which is very Star Wars now, but it wasn't Star Wars then, so.
And then the Death Star blows up, and that's the end of Pinhead.
Yeah, you get a little, like, he gets crispy. Did you guys see that? Like, looked really close, and as the light's coming in, he's, like, slowly, his face is, like, charring. It was very, very interesting, makeup-wise.
Yeah, we don't see, Angelique does disappear at that point. Everybody else does, except for Merchant and
where did they
Pinhead.
go?
I mean, I assume they'll all get light exploded as well, because it's permeating everything.
Yeah, it would have been cool if it was like him and Angelique staring at each other, and then they both get blown up. That would have been more satisfying, personally. I feel like we spent so much time with her, and I know it's not really, if they got edited, if it got, sliced and diced, that's not their fault. But I was just kind of like, what about this character I got really invested in? Where is she? Why is she just a henchman now? It was kind of a bummer, but.
So the end, too, really shows Pinhead's confidence. And because the dialogue is, he says, no, I cannot die. He never, ever expected that he'd be dead.
Overconfidence.
And then, he sees what's about to happen to him. And that's for the franchise, that's a very powerful scene.
I feel like Angelique could have been like, oh shit, I knew this was going to happen. I saw the drawing. I, spent years with these people. I knew.
I wonder if they intended it. They must not have intended it to end the franchise. I mean, they kill off. It's not like Jason. The Friday the 13th 4 final chapter was 4 the end. So are they thinking this is the last one? It didn't seem like that. It sounds like they're trying to keep building the films. So did they want to just have a big dramatic thing and kill Pinhead in a movie just to say they did?
I think it kind of goes back to that. It's so far in the future, they can still tell a ton of stories.
Yeah, it kind of future-proofs it. Because at least you have like an end. It's like the Twilight of Heroes for the DC universe. They have an end, and they can still make stories in between here and now. but that's kind of what it builds up to. So regardless of whatever adventures he's on now, it will always just be him yelling in space.
And I wrote down the last 2 lines. It's welcome to oblivion, amen. So Pinhead says amen. Does Merchant say welcome to oblivion?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's sort of like, yeah, you are dead now.
Is he happy to die? That's the question I was wondering. Is Pinhead
I don't
happy?
think Pinhead is happy. I don't think he feels that emotion.
I think he's accepting his defeat.
He was once a human, right? I mean, that's the whole kind of end game of 2, where, he comes to terms with his once humanity that he forgot. And so, what the whole first one kind of established is, this is a hell dimension, angels to some, devils to others. Does it get sickening after a while? I would imagine so. I can't imagine that even Pinhead would want to do it forever. Maybe it's an answer to the question of why is he saying amen? Maybe he's happy to experience oblivion himself. What are people's thoughts on that?
Have you read Scarlet Gospels?
No.
There's a lot to Pinhead wanting to explore more and kind of become bored with his current status, and then he wants more from his existence, and that's kind of what that book is about.
Okay, this is a Wes Craven book.
Clive Barker.
Oh, Clive Barker. I'm sorry.
Yeah. That's the final Hellraiser book. Like his I'm ending this story as the creator of it. I'm ending it with this book.
Okay, so he essentially explores those themes of like Pinhead wanting to be more than just where he's at now.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
I feel like you get some of that from these movies, like even in this one. I'm exquisitely empty. It sounds like he's happy about it, but like, I don't know if we believe him. Like, he does kind of. I've seen it all. I've killed everybody. No one can hurt me, except Angelique, I guess.
I think he's too overconfident for sure.
Yeah, too overconfident. And it could totally have been, done in a way of like what you said was a facade, where maybe he deep down in the emptiness somewhere, he was actually just kind of bored and all of this seemed routine. Like maybe that's why he was getting so frustrated with Angelique, right? Because he thought he knew how to handle the situation and she was just getting in his way. It's like, okay, come on, move aside already. I've been through this millions of times. And maybe that overconfidence is echoing Clive Barker wrote.
I think too, like was touched upon, his knowledge of his human past still connects to him. It still sticks because that was the whole thing of part 3 is he's separated from his human past and his human essence, and so he's running amok. And I'm going to be a mass murderer and whatever. Who cares about the puzzle box? And then when they get, every time that they're connected in every other film, it's he plays differently. So I think constantly having that knowledge of what he was, that's kind of a bummer.
Eats at him, you could say. It's like his own personal hell of what he once was and what could have been. Yeah. Okay.
Happens when you've been in a job too long, really.
Even if it's your dream job of being the hell boss. It's lonely at the top.
Yeah, nowhere to go.
I love this movie. It's one of my favorite Hellraiser movies. I mean, there's 1 and 2 and 4, and those are the ones that I like for me. Like I did go back. I did watch all of them through maybe a couple of years ago just to see, just to know. And I had probably watched 4 as a rental or something from back in the day. I don't think I saw it on television. I'm pretty sure I must have rented it as a tape from my local place. And I enjoyed it. I was probably pretty young when I saw it first, like during my initial horror foray. I thought it was awesome. You did get all of those different places, those different scenes. You get space, you get the past, and you get the modern times. It's fun. It's got silliness to it, which I do like, but it's still got some of the seriousness, some of those lines that we did share. Like, those are some really good lines. And it is a little ridiculous and over the top and of its time in places, but that's kind of what I like for a lot of things and got a lot of appeal for me. And people do seem to not talk beyond 2, because 3 is definitely like, there's even more wacky and less there. I think with this one, it was a bit more thought out, and it does sound like initially they wanted it to be a bit more. I think they probably was like, well, 3's good, but it was very bombastic and very like action-y, whereas this one, it kind of draws that back a little bit and says, let's tell a story and see what we do there. So I love this movie. I would recommend it to anybody that I guess is into Hellraiser or just like weird random horror and even sci-fi, just to see some of the stuff that they do with it.
I also love this movie. When I was lucky enough to be working at the theater when this movie came out, it started when we got the promotional material in, and Dimension went all out. We got a couple of T-shirts. We got, of course, some movie posters. We got buttons, and we've got, as you've seen before, the 3-foot by 6-foot vinyl banner. I took it because who else in my theater was a Hellraiser fan? Nobody. So I got it all. But that was the only Hellraiser film that I was able to see on the big screen. So that was an instant, great reaction. But also they sent us the trailers, and I was a projectionist. So they sent us the red band trailers, which you're only supposed to attach to R-rated films. And I would attach it to R-rated films and maybe some PG-13s if they were more adult-based. But I basically they kept sending them to us. I don't know why, but I kept putting them on as many movies as possible, even though I wasn't supposed to, because I wanted as many eyeballs to see this preview as possible. So I had that love of the franchise already. So then going in to watch it all the time at the theater was great. So it had that nice sentimental feeling for me, but I was also glad that I really enjoyed the film as a movie itself.
Right on. Jenny, any final thoughts?
I don't know. I didn't hate it. I didn't like it. I thought it was fun. I did see the Hellraiser series. I saw them a little bit later in life. Maybe if I had gotten into them sooner, I would have liked this movie a lot more. I'm not sure. I did like the time traveling. That was fun. Yeah, I think I saw the first Hellraiser. Definitely rented it from my like local massive video. Same thing as the UK Tron. The second Hellraiser I didn't see until very recent as well. But yeah, I love the whole series. It's always a fun adventure.
Yeah. I recommend this movie for Hellraiser fans. Mike, I think I got into Hellraiser because of you.
Nice.
Yeah, I think I've only ever saw the first one, and you kept telling me to explore. So I saw the second one at your recommendation, and then I watched the third one. And again, here we are. I'm watching the fourth one at you and Kai's recommendation. And it's fun. It is fun. I do have some reservations about it. I would have liked to have seen more in terms of the story. Considering they had some issues, the studio, and it wasn't what the director or the team initially wanted, I can forgive it for that. What we do have, however, is an entertaining romp, great body horror. I almost wish they integrated the 90s with the 1800s France. Would have wanted to see more of the 1800s France and just have it interweave.
That was the funnest part to me, too.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen the sci-fi interwoven with the old-timey France parts, and maybe have the two Merchant characters intertwined in that regard. Have the toy maker, OG toy maker, have a little bit more autonomy and exploration, and then establish Angelique more and have a little bit more footing between her and the Merchants, and set up more of a rivalry that way.
They did do a lot that you wouldn't think they would have been able to do in that.
They did do a lot, yeah. I'm giving it that credit, but I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of that. I mean, granted, studio kickback and all of that, but
this is the fourth installment of a movie where in 3 they were killing people with CDs and television cameras.
3 now.
That's right.
So when you compare the two, I can't believe that it went up. Like usually once you start going down that downhill when in sequel territory, usually don't come back up. And this one did. And it must be because the people involved, it sounds like the director cared. I'm only going to compare it to Leprechaun 4 because number one, that's a wonderful bad movie. And number two, it's the fourth movie in space. This is the fourth movie set in space. And I think what we got for that is way more than we should have, than we deserve, really. That I would expect from something that this ambitious too, that they obviously didn't have a lot of budget for. It'd be cool to see what the Paris looked like at the time. We didn't leave that room for a reason. They didn't have money to show anything else. There's no horses because they couldn't afford a horse. There's no servants because they couldn't afford a servant.
Right.
I think we got a lot more than a lot of other fourth installments would be for where the franchise was at the time too, maybe.
Yeah. That's true. Like I said at the top of this, I appreciate their ambition, and it definitely shows. Again, recommended for Hellraiser fans.
If you like weird, though, this movie has got that. If you like weird stuff you maybe haven't seen before or wouldn't think to ever combine, I think this movie delivers on that. And that's one of the things that always interests me is strange films, different films like that. And this one is certainly that.
It can stand on its own, for sure. It's interesting.
Yeah, you definitely, I don't know why you wouldn't watch the first Hellraiser, but if you didn't, and you just were like, screw it, I'm going to start with number 4 because I like the number 4 for whatever reason. Yeah, it would hold up. It would definitely hold up. It is a weird wet casserole of a movie. You get all these, like you're saying, Guy, all these odd ingredients just combined together. It's a fun romp. Recommendations based on Hellraiser Bloodline. Who would like to go first?
Okay, I'll go first.
Oh, no.
Oh!
Fine.
We can flip a coin either way.
Fight it out.
Dave, you decide. Me or Kai?
Kai, it was your recommendation. You go first.
Okay. So mine is a 1994 film called Brain Scan. Is anybody familiar with this movie?
Yes.
No.
So this was definitely one that I picked up at the video store. And when I saw it, it blew my mind. I was, 12 to 14, something along there, maybe 11, probably older than that. So obviously it's a 1994 film that seems like a little bit too early for 1994, but also too late. I don't know. It's a movie starring Edward Furlong back when he was an adorable little wonder. It's a horror movie based on a CD-ROM game based from Hellraiser IV Bloodlines, aka Bloodraiser, as I misspoke and then everybody thought it was hilarious, so that's what we started calling it. It's also a weird movie. Edward Furlong is like a sad kid. I think he's got a dead mom, and so he's alone with his dad, who is hardly in the film because he's like traveling or something. Little Eddie Furlong's character is a kid who's into horror movies and gaming, especially PC gaming. He's got like a big setup that obviously his dad is compensating by buying the kid anything he wants. And he's got this cool room in the attic, and it's got like tons of horror movie posters and his whole computer setup. And him and his like friend who's like, they're both super 90s, like mushroom cuts everywhere. The friend's wearing like 17,000 layers of clothing at all times. None of them at all adhere to his body. And I think they see an ad in a magazine for the CD-ROM game called Brain Scan. So Edward Furlong calls the phone number for it. They mail him one. The game is like the next step in horror gaming. And it's definitely like everything is simulated. Whoever made it has no understanding of how a computer works. And it's great. He starts playing the game. Of course, everybody's like, oh, you're into horror, and that's bad, kid. And he's like, no, I'm going to do whatever I want. He's in love with the girl next door that he creepily watches with binoculars all the time. I don't condone any of that. But I think she knows about it and is also taking pictures of him from afar. So, they're both weird. That's all right. And he plays the game and realizes that when he chooses to simulate a serial killer experience in the game, he just kind of like blacks out for a little while, wakes up, and is like, well, that game was pretty intense, yo. You see like all first person point of view of him going around killing people. But then he starts seeing on the news like, oh, my neighbor's dead. That's weird. So perhaps things in the game are happening in real life. And while he's playing this game and things are kind of going to shit, you do get to meet a character called Trickster. So Trickster is sort of like Drop Dead Fred on 90s acid. He's got like a crazy jumpsuit, elongated, weird, gross fingers, like a bright orangey red mullet mohawk going on, who just like has to tell the kid like, hey, this is what's happening with brain scan. This is your world now, kid. And it's just wonderful, weird fun. And this is also something I watched recently again and was like, yeah, that's kind of like Bloodraiser. So that's my recommendation. 1994's Brain Scan.
Right on. All right, Mike, what have you got for us?
Mike in the dark.
Mike in the dark. To those listening, Mike has a little bust of Pinhead in the foreground of his video because we're recording this on Zoom. And you were right behind it, and I forgot it was there. So when I looked, it just suddenly appeared in my eye line, and I'm like, whoa! It was like a ghost. But what do you have for us?
Well, I'm going to stick with Mr. Barker's creations, and I'm going to recommend Nightbreed, but more so the director's cut.
Yes.
Yes.
So, I mean, Nightbreed is a great film, but it feels a little lacking once you see the director's cut, which this is one of those cases where the director's cut is vastly different. You know,
Better.
yeah, and definitely better. They're almost two different films. The first one, the studio kind of made it into a slasher film, and that's not what it's about at all. It's a movie that has a lot of quote-unquote monsters, but realistically, the monsters are the good guys. And one of those, where you really realize that the humans in this film are the monsters because they're trying to snuff out, the creatures in this film. And you can really kind of look to that, especially in modern times, as a comparison to what's going on in the world right now. But before that, I mean, this movie is also from the 80s, and I'm not really going to go through the plot, but it's basically someone who's been seeing a psychologist, and the psychologist doesn't really have his patient's best interest in mind in this case. And then he wants to find a place called Midian because that's where the monsters live, and that's what he considers himself to be. He finds it, and eventually everyone else kind of seems to find it too, all of the law enforcement, etc. The people in Midian were just living their lives on their own in their own community. And here come the people who want to control everything to take it away from them. So it really flips that whole monsters are bad thing on its head. Clive Barker is a great activist for human rights of all kinds, and it's got his incredible creativity. The creature designs are amazing. It's the things that he can think up. He directed the film. He, of course, wrote the original story and the script, etc. And this was great. If you see the director's cut, it's something that, we were talking while we were on break, me and Dave. It's a movie where for decades you could only see Nightbreed, which was good, but we always knew that there was more. And then a groundswell of fan interest, forced Morgan Creek, who owned the film, to not be nice and give in to the fans, but to see that there was money to be made. And so they were happy with that. And then the fans were happy with that because we got the director's cut, which, like I said, drastically changes the film. It's a whole different movie. So if you like to see a horror movie that's kind of turned on its head and has a lot of heart and might make you feel a little more included, because a lot of times horror fans are looked down on, and people think that we're horrible people and we want to kill people, and they just don't even want to understand us. And I think this is the movie for you.
Amen.
Yeah.
I remember I've only seen I think I've seen it twice now, but the first time I saw it was the director's cut. Dave recommended it and we watched it one night, and I just remember loving everything about that movie and wanting more of the world and of the characters. So it's just so well done. Highly recommend it.
Definitely not the only one who wants more of that. Because then there's the Cabal cut, right? which is like
Yeah.
an additional hour longer, just about.
Yeah, they released like the Cabal cut. They only released on DVD. Morgan Creek only allowed 1,000 copies to be pressed, and you could only get them through like Clive's website, and so those are gone, and gonna collect, gonna command a lot of money. But yeah, I guess online there's the Ultimate Cabal cut, and that takes the like 3 hour plus Cabal cut to like 3.5 or more. That
Wow.
but you have to do some online nefarious digging to find that. But like the Cabal cut, the 1,000 copies, that has a lot of VHS work print footage in it, and those parts are rough to watch. So if you're not into that, you might not want to watch it. But like for the historical aspect, it's great. And I've not seen the Ultimate Cabal cut, and that like there are scenes that I remember seeing when I saw it at a horror convention that I don't recall seeing on any of the home video releases so far. So maybe the Ultimate Cabal cut has that. So there are different versions to track down. The director's cut is the most accessible version with Clive's approval. But yeah, if you can do some sleuthing and digging, go on and do it.
If you have those connections.
Right.
The world's your oyster. All right. Thank you, Mike. Jenny, what recommendations you got?
Well, you mentioned, I actually had two in mind and I didn't know which I was going to choose. And then you mentioned one earlier. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll do my other one. So you mentioned Wishmaster. And there's two movies that came to mind when we first started watching this film. And it was Wishmaster, directed by Wes Craven. Oh, I'm sorry, produced by Wes Craven, directed by Robert Kurtzman, of course. And then my other pick actually also weirdly has a weird connection to Wishmaster in the form of Andrew Divoff, the actor. Which I didn't even realize until like 5 minutes ago when I looked up the movie. I was like, oh, wait a minute. He is in Brian Usna's Faust, and he plays the evil character M, aka the devil, I guess you could say. So it's your basic Faust storyline. Main actor, I forget his name, something Frost. Michael Frost, David Frost. He sells his soul to the mysterious M in order to get revenge on the people who killed his girlfriend. He was, fun fact, one of my favorite parts of the movie, he's in a mental institution because he loses his memory, and the thing that brings his memory back is like a hardcore metal CD that a music therapist lets him listen to. It's just a wild romp. I don't know. There's a lot of beautiful body horror in it. He ends up turning into a demon because of his pact with the devil, and uses him as, or he wants to use him to his advantage, and he becomes like a killing machine. It's very 90s. It's actually a 2000s movie, but it feels extremely 90s, and I guess early 2000s as well. There's a fine line there, but there's a lot of body horror. There's a lot of chase scenes. There's the mortality, good versus, or not mortality, but there's good versus evil. I don't know, popped in my mind, and I was like, this would be a good double feature with Hellraiser 4.
Right on. I will also second Faust, Brian Usna's Faust, because I have, and this might be a theme for a future episode, unofficial trilogies. And, I have New Metal, the movie. And it's Faust with Takashi Miike's Terraformers. And I need to find like a third one, which shouldn't be that hard to find in like the early 2000s.
Blade.
Oh shit, Blade! That might be it. I don't know. To be continued. But yeah, that's a strong contender.
Or Spawn. No, I'm sorry. I meant Spawn. Sorry.
Yeah.
Spawn
Okay.
It's definitely New Metal, the movie.
It's the official trilogy. They're all ridiculous in like the same way, but also in different ways as well. But anyway, thank you, Jenny. It's great.
I want to second Wishmaster 2 in particular was one that I saw and very much enjoyed, and does kind of feel like that would go well with this movie, except it's not at all related. I like Wishmaster 2. Just want to put that out there.
I have to check that out now.
That's the one set in prison.
Yes.
Where everyone has
There's
many
only
wishes.
Two. Is there 2 Wishmasters, or is there 3?
There's 4.
Yeah, they made a couple.
Okay.
There's 4. The third one is not great, but I will stand by the fourth one. Ironically enough, I'm in the K-Tron and Mike boat with the Hellraiser, but only with Wishmaster 4, because it's a lot It's kind of like a soap opera-y type of movie. Takes place in no more than like 2 or 3 rooms. Definitely like a 3-act play, but with Wishmaster. The relationship dynamic's really kind of interesting. So anyway, a light recommendation for that. But my real recommendation is The Devil Rides Out by Terrence Fisher, a Hammer horror movie, of which I'm a huge fan of. And granted, there are many Hammer horror movies that would go well with this. But seeing as my favorite part was the 1800s France segment with all the incantations and, the summoning of, demons and what have you, this one fits the bill as well. You have Christopher Lee as a good guy. He was mostly known as playing all the bad guys, the big baddies, Wicker Man, Dracula, Sauron. This one of the rare, if not only instances where he plays a good cultist, if you will. Well, he's not really an occultist. He's a devout Christian guy, but he's very well versed in the occult and defending against it. And it's based off of a Ben Wheatley novel where a dear friend of his is practicing Satanism in this cult, and he tries to save him, and it just gets out of control. Family gets involved, and I won't necessarily ruin any of the plot points for you, but it is a fantastic ride. Fantastic car chases. There's no exposition dumps, none of that. Everything is told through action. I have a soft spot for occult films in general, but also occult films where the devil is a goat, and this checks that box hardcore. There's just so many great visual scenes and giant spiders. Death as a Horseman is in there. Just a fantastic climactic ending. Often cited as Terrence Fisher's best movie. Terrence Fisher being the default director for Hammer horror, doing like all of the Frankensteins with Peter Cushing. Readily accessible. Shout Factory put it on Blu-ray in the States. It's also streaming in a bunch of places. Devil Rides Out, 1968. Check it out. And now we go, smooth transition, into what have we been watching in the past couple of weeks. Kaya, you first.
I've been on kind of a comedy kick, which isn't normal for me, and I'm not too big into comedies, but there's definitely a chunk of comedy movies that I just missed. A lot of the 2000s, late to mid 2000 comedies I kind of checked out on because they had gotten to a point where they were not the best thing I'd ever seen in my life. And they definitely gave away all the good jokes during trailers and that kind of thing. So I kind of checked out for some of those. I'm going back and watching some. I did see Hot Rod for the first time recently. Has anybody seen that one?
No.
It is far more hilarious than I would imagine it would be. It very much had some strokes of the National Lampoon comedies, which I'm all about. That was worth my time. That one's the one that's about a kid, and I can't remember his name. I think it's the Lonely Island guy. He's in his 20s. He's got a dirt bike, and his whole thing is he wants to be a stunt performer like his father before him. Him and his little loser friends are all about him trying to beat Evel Knievel's record of jumping school buses. It's different than a lot of the comedies at that time, a little bit less sexual, as many of them were, and more just how silly. And I also recently watched a National Lampoon movie that I hadn't seen before called Loaded Weapon 1. Has anybody seen Loaded Weapon?
Oh, yeah.
All right, so I knew Mike would back me up because Mike knows where it's at. So I'm a big fan of these sight gag movies that just don't exist anymore. Nobody makes them because somebody somewhere decided that it's not funny to make a pun sight gag in a film. That is a lost art. So this movie is from 1993. Loaded Weapon is obviously a play on Lethal Weapon. This is Loaded Weapon 1 because at the time there were 3 Lethal Weapon movies. So the whole joke through the film is that there's going to be sequels. And it's a parody of the Loaded Weapon franchise. It is stock filled with actors. It's Emilio Estevez and Samuel L. Jackson are the cop duo who are trying to track down some Girl Scout cookies laced with cocaine. And Whoopi Goldberg is in this movie, John Lovitz, William Shatner, Tim Curry. As people just kept showing up, I was like, my God, Why does
Oh.
not anyone talk about Loaded Weapon 1? I knew I was in for a treat when the movie opened with a scene besides opening credits over a car driving terribly through the streets. Very reminiscent of Naked Gun. The car finally gets to a convenience store, and they must have used a real stocked convenience store because it's all actual products that are in there. It is definitely not racially sensitive. I'm sure there's definitely a few jokes in there that were like, oh no. Some of that scene does have that, but Emilio Estevez's character is reading a magazine, and he's kind of looking through while like the people are going to start robbing this place, and he's looking at a magazine and he opens it up, and you see like those little like cardboard things fall out, those subscription little pieces of paper thing. You see that fall out when he's looking at the magazine. There's some more dialogue somewhere else. And then the camera cuts back to him. And he is like knee deep in a pile of those. And that's it. I lost my shit. Like that. It's such a funny, simple joke. And people don't really make those in films anymore. It just kept going with that. So I don't think I've ever actually watched Lethal Weapon movies altogether, like little bits here and there. I knew some of the jokes from watching It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia and their remakes of Lethal Weapon that they've done throughout their series. But it was hilarious. So that's where I'm at in life right now is Loaded Weapon 1. I did see it in a 4-film favorite pack, if you're familiar with some of those DVDs. It's actually bundled with the last 3 Police Academy movies. So Police Academy 1 through 4
Oh,
is
nice.
in a set, and then Police Academy 5, 6, and 7, I guess, and then Loaded Weapon 1 are on this disc.
I have a soft spot for the Police Academy movies. My dad and I used to watch them when I was younger.
Nice.
Yeah.
Classics.
What
Wonderful films.
Which Police Academy was Christopher Lee in? He was in one of the later ones.
Oh, he was in the last one.
Oh,
You
man.
gotta get that box set, Dave.
I gotta pick that up. Complete my Christopher Lee collection.
Then you can watch Loaded Weapon 1 as well.
Absolutely.
I feel like I've seen it. From when you were describing it, I was like, that rings a bell, but probably not for a long time.
Yeah, maybe pieces of it on TV or something.
Well, thank you, Kaya. Mike, what are you up to these days?
So the most recent movie I saw was the Frank Zappa documentary just called Zappa.
How was that?
And it's excellent. If, I am a big Frank Zappa fan. I knew it was in production and it promised to show a lot of stuff you've never seen before. But, a lot of stuff promises that. But this really delivers. Alex Winter made the movie, Lost Boys and Bill and Ted. It was a passion project, and he worked really closely with family, and he got unprecedented access to the Zappa vault.
Ooh.
Because Frank kept everything. He recorded every show, and he kept everything in his basement on tape, where it still is. And, they can't transcribe it fast enough, but, he got access to all that stuff and was able to help get a lot of the stuff digitized, especially so he could use it for the film. But it's great for new fans because it shows a lot of the history and it's accessible to them. It's not just a hardcore fan documentary. It's accessible to everybody. And it shows a lot of never before seen footage too. So that's great for the hardcore fan. It's streaming for free right now. I believe it's on Prime. Okay. So if you have a Prime account, but it's also on DVD or Blu-ray, and you can also, rent it in places as well. But if you're a Frank Zappa fan or even just a music fan or a documentary fan, Aces is this one.
It reminds me a lot of the new Patreon for Joe Bob, digitizing all of his old tapes and all of that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's an important venture, I believe.
Yeah, worth checking that out too. But no, this sounds great. I've always been meaning to get into Zappa.
I think you did. I mean, there's Zappa stuff I don't like because he did everything. He scraped every genre, and his band was constantly changing, and not because anybody was bad, because that's the direction he wanted to go in. So he picked new players, and there are eras of the band I don't care for, and there are eras of the band that I'll die for. And so, but I think you dig it. Right
on, yeah, because it's always a monument. Right. It's always this his discography and you're like, I don't know where to begin.
Where to begin,
Right.
You know,
Right.
there's no best of that does it justice, you know?
Right. Right.
But-
Well, I mean, if you watch the documentary, you'll hear a lot of different era music that he made, and bam, you can decide what you like and go from there.
Right on. How long is it?
It's like 2.5 hours.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Because I was about to say, if it was like a 90-minute documentary, I'm like, that probably wouldn't do it justice, you know?
Right. Right.
Well,
The
thank
dude
you,
had a
Mike.
catalog,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they'll release a box set with like the 6-hour Snyder cut of the Zappa documentary. Thanks, Mike. Jenny.
Yeah.
We,
This dude also has a catalog. He is one of the kings of horror. I have been on a major Vincent Price kick lately. We got a couple box sets, right, Dave? Like, they don't have a good compendium, unfortunately.
no.
What was the one you got recently? I was trying to remember.
Recently, I got the Arrow Video
Yes.
6 Gothic Tales.
Yep.
I don't know if that's Region B locked or not.
See, that's the thing. Yeah, I'm like, where
yeah.
can I even tell these people how I recommend watching these movies?
Yeah, it's even harder because Shout Factory has or had 3 Vincent Price box sets, but the first one went out of print, then went back into print. The second one I picked up just as it was going out of print, and I think the third one just went out of print as well. So
Yep.
I
I'm not
know.
going to know what movies are from what box sets. I didn't do that much research. I'm sorry, but I will recommend House on Haunted Hill, 1959. It's quintessential, and I had never seen it. I had seen the remake from I think 99.
I love that movie.
Which is also great. I love that movie. I'm not saying it's bad, but the original is just solid. It's solid. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. Price is the charismatic bastard you want him to be. Him and his wife have this extremely volatile relationship, which comes to a head. I'm not going to say anything, but basically the premise is he invites, I don't remember how many people it is, 8.
I don't remember.
I don't remember. He invites a number of people to the house, this haunted house. And in the Hollywood Hills, it looks like, I don't know, they get a lump sum of money if they can stay the night. And they all end up getting locked in together and calamity ensues. It's great. There's some great acting. There's some spooky, situations that really still hold up to this day, even if it is from 1959. It's beautiful. Other than that, we've been banging them out. We watched Theater of Blood, we watched Tower of London, House of Usher, Pit and the Pendulum, Mask of the Red Death, Witchfinder General, not so great, House of the Long Shadows. I don't know. We've been on. This is just my Vincent Price speech. This is my TED talk right now. I don't know. It's great to dive back in. He is such a talented man. He was such a talented man, and he is missed. I have 2 little tidbits about him that I just found out. He was a gourmet chef, and he also did the voice of Professor Ratigan in The Great Mouse Detective, which if you were a 90s child, you probably love that movie as well, and I was super excited to find that out. So that is my Vincent Price TED Talk. Check out The House on Haunted Hill if you have not seen it. It is a great intro into one of the kings of horror.
Yeah, and speaking on House on Haunted Hill, I looked up where it's streaming, and it's streaming everywhere. You can rent it and buy it on VOD, of course, the usual platforms, but it's also streaming for free on Prime, Tubi TV, which is one of my favorites, for free, Roku channel, as well as Plex and Canopy. And that's just small cross-section of the platforms it's on, according to Letterboxd. So it's widely available and definitely worth everyone's time.
Thank you, Dave, for doing that research for me that I
no worries.
was too lazy to do. I was just excited about The Great Mouse Detective because I'm a major work, but what are your recommendations?
My recommendations? Sorry, I was in the middle of trying to find everyone else's recommendations to see where they're streaming. I've been watching a lot of modern horror. I mean, modern, they're still a few years old, but I'm usually pretty bad with keeping up with things. I feel like my watch list is so big, it's hard to keep up with all these classic gems that I have yet to watch. Never mind all the stuff that's just coming out now. But I managed to watch some Ari Aster movies. I say as though he only has more than two. He only has two, but I watched Hereditary and Midsummer, and both are really great. I particularly like Hereditary. I had some hesitations going into it because I felt from the advertisement, and to judge a book by its cover, I thought it would be kind of one of those emotional slogs. It would be this depression fest, like a tragedy happens and then, you deal with like the fallout and all of that. It's not necessarily the case. I mean, a tragedy does happen, but it doesn't take the turn you think it will. It goes in a very interesting direction, which I won't necessarily get into, because of spoilers and all of that. But it was very satisfying. I love this movie. It's just well paced. It was well shot. Definitely well choreographed. Toni Collette does an amazing job in this movie. I wouldn't say she carries the movie, but her presence is definitely felt throughout and is a powerhouse throughout this. I guess you can say she's the Vincent Price of Hereditary. It is just fabulous. I can't gush over it too much because this is definitely a movie you should probably just go in blind and enjoy. But Hereditary gets my highest recommendation. And then we also watched Midsummer, the director's cut, which I haven't seen the theatrical cut, but I have looked up into what's different. And I'd say that the scenes that have been added do add a lot to it.
I did see it in the theater, which was hilarious because some of the things that happened in that movie to see with like just a regular audience that maybe just wanted to see a horror movie and watch everybody like giggle and feel uncomfortable in a room full of people. Like, it's a great date film is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. It's just such a weird movie in a good way. It's very Wicker Man-ish, and that's not a spoiler because you can just look at the advertisements for it and be like, oh yeah, Wicker Man. And it's very opposite in Hereditary because Hereditary goes in places that you don't necessarily expect, whereas with Midsummer, you know exactly where it's gonna head to, but the trip there is so unpredictable. The weird pacing of it all, like it just definitely keeps ramping up and then just cascades into quite the ending. I just saw it like a few days ago and it's been in my head ever since. I've just been kind of like, but this, the foreshadowing, the little hints here and there and all of that, I definitely prefer Hereditary. Midsommar isn't necessarily a perfect movie, I would argue that Hereditary is, but definitely worth checking out. I don't know where you can watch the director's cut. I don't know if it's streaming or if it's just the theatrical cut, but I know that at least when I checked, the director's cut was only streaming on Apple TV or whatever their streaming service is. So trying to find it was kind of difficult up until A24 put it for sale on their web store. So I don't know if that's changed since then, but definitely worth seeking out. So yeah, some Ari Aster love. I've seen all of Robert Eggers' stuff, and I really liked him, and I thought Ari Aster was kind of like less reserved, was the feeling I got, and a little bit more bombastic, but the opposite proved to be true. He just has longer movies. But yeah, that's those are my recommendations.
Late
I can't
to
go
the
into
game.
Yeah, I can't necessarily, probably everyone's seen them already, but I can't necessarily get into them as deeply as you guys did because the spoilers will abound. Like, it's definitely one of those, you have to ride this wave.
Just ride it.
Just ride it. Johnny Utah this. That's my love of Point Break seeping into this. But yeah, that's it. That is the Midnight Cast episode 1. I don't know how long this has run on for, but
Hours.
it was fun. I hope it was just fun to listen to. Join us next time when we talk about... I can never summarize this appropriately.
Kaya,
you say it.
And I never say it the same way twice. So movies that contain the name... movies with songs that contain the name of the movie in a song.
It's quite a mouthful.
Right. And if you think about it, you've definitely heard it and you know exactly what we're talking about. When a movie opens and you hear that theme hit and there's a song that kicks in written specifically for this film, which kind of tells you the entire plot of the movie you're about to watch. There are so many. It's a passion project of mine to start cataloging my favorites. And I'm glad to share this with as many people as possible. I'm very excited to do that with you guys.
Yeah.
So coming up next month will be that episode.
Get your list ready.
Get your list ready.
Maybe we'll have some overlap. Maybe not. You don't know.
So to quote a song from a movie named after the movie, take a chance, do a dance. Midnite Romero Society. All right. All right, everyone. I am Midnight Dave. Roll call. Say goodbye.
Jenny from the grave.
Jet Mike.
Katron.
We are portions of the Midnite Romero Society, and we thank you for joining us tonight. We have events coming up and all of that. MidniteRomeroSociety.org. Keep tabs, subscribe, all that good jazz, jazzamatazz. Until then, have a great night. We love you all, and stay scared.
Bye.
Bye.